All right. Hi, everybody. It's great to be with all of you. I'm excited to spend the next half hour with you doing a little study and a little thinking about how we can find hope, how we can find tikvah in a particular psalm. In this case, Psalm 121. So let's start with the blessing for study. I'm going to share my screen here, and I'll invite you, if you feel comfortable, to unmute yourself so we can hear one another say our blessing for study together. Please join me. Baruch
Baruch
atah
atah
Adonai
Adonai,
Eloheinu
Eloheinu
melech
melech
haolam
haolam,
asher
asher
kidshanu
kiddushanu
b'mitzvotav
b'mitzvotav,
tzivanu
tzivanu
b'divrei
la'asok b'divrei
Torah.
Torah.
Blessed is the Eternal, whose mitzvot, whose commandments bring holiness to our lives, and who commands us to immerse, to engage in words of Torah. So I'm a little bit inspired this week by the session we had last week with Rabbi Emily Lozben Ostrov, where we studied Psalm 23, The Lord is my shepherd. And I thought to myself, what are our, or at least my, other favorite psalms that we could look at together as a community and try to find hope in these ancient words? The Psalms really are the perfect Jewish place to seek hope. Because the Psalms, unlike a whole lot of the other texts that we look at, the Psalms are prayer. They are liturgy. And they are in many ways intended to bring hope into the world and to help us seek hope in various ways. So Psalm 121, and Susan, I see your comment that it's your favorite. Psalm 121, the famous I lift up my eyes to the mountains psalm, I think gives us an opportunity to think about what hope really is, what it means to find hope, and also where in this world and perhaps outside of this world do we find hope. And depending on how long our discussion goes, we may also look at a melody or two of this psalm toward the end. So I'm going to start. I just want to jump right in. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to read the entire Psalm 121 through, and then I'm going to invite you to respond to it. What do you see? Where do you find the hopeful message, or do you find a hopeful message here? And then I want to go a couple of verses at a time and see what we can find in a little more granular way as we look through the words of this ancient prayer. So, could I get a volunteer? Susan, I see your hand up. Will you read Psalm
Yes.
121 for us?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Thank you.
A song for ascents. I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from God, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. See, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm and will guard your life. God will guard your going and coming now and forever.
Thank you, Susan. So I'm going to switch it here. I know it's a little small, but this way we can have the entire text in our screens at the same time. And I want to invite you just to respond. What is the message? What message do you receive from this psalm? What do you suppose might have been the situation or the moment that caused for these words to be created? Why would the psalmist, whoever they are, have written these words? Susan, I see that in the chat you say you find hope. Do you want to tell us more?
Well, being in a city that is surrounded by mountains, I can easily look up to the mountains, and the fact that they're there long before I was, and long before other civilizations were, and long, God willing, before after I will be there, they are these fortresses of God's majesty. If I want to get out of my heretical agnostic assessment, they are like monuments to the world, and just the act of looking up in general instead of looking down is something that can raise um, the good chemicals and neurons in your brain. So I think that's, and because they're frankly remarkably beautiful. And even here they change with the seasons.
So beautiful, Susan. Thank you. You said so many things that I want to respond to. I'll just mention for, very briefly that as you were talking, I was thinking how amazing it is that feeling small can actually make us feel hopeful, right? The mountains are so much bigger than us, which means that we feel small, which makes, it's not that it makes your problems go away, but in a sense, it means that all the things that we are, they there is more in this universe than us, right? And there's something hopeful about the idea that the world goes on. The sun will rise tomorrow. The mountains are just so much bigger than us. And if we look up, and I'll just point out that it's translated here as I turn my eyes to the mountain, but the word in Hebrew is, of course, to look up. There's something powerful about looking up. Bob, please, and then Alfred.
Well, I can't resist looking at the very beginning, a song of ascent. And as I understand it, I don't know this too well, but this is not a psalm of David, but maybe it's one of those written by the sons of Korah and said by the Levites as they went to the temple. At each step, they would stop and say another psalm. And really, the ascent is critical here to looking up at the mountains.
Hmm. Thanks, Bob. Yeah, I'm going to say more about that in a moment when we look at Rashi's commentary. Alfred, please.
When help is coming from beyond the mountains, you can't see it until it's over the crest of the mountains. So imagine being in a valley, you're looking to the mountains and hope that the aid will come over the mountains to you.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. The imagery of the mountains is so powerful. As Bob points out, though, the power of this psalm begins even before the imagery of the mountains. It begins in the very first words, Shir Lama'alot. I want to now look two verses at a time here. Shir Lama'alot. Esa Einai el Heharim me'ayin yavo Ezri. A song for ascent, a song for going up. I lift my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, from the eternal, Oseh Shamayim va'aretz, the maker of heaven and earth. So the commentators ask, what is this shir lama'alot? What does it mean that this is a song for going up? By the way, you might know this word. The root of this word ma'alot is the same as the root of the word aliyah, going up, either making aliyah to the land of Israel or going up to the bima for an aliyah, right? To go up. It's, by the way, also the same as the word El Al, the national airline of Israel, which means to the heights. El Al is actually also a biblical phrase. It comes from the prophets, to the heights. So Shir Ma'alot is somehow a song for ascending, a song for going up. And the rabbis want to know, what does it mean this is a song for going up? Now, modern scholars, critical scholars have looked at this and actually noticed that there's a set of psalms that begins here and extends for, I want to say, about the next 15 psalms that all start with the words Shir Ma'alot or Shir HaMa'alot, a song for ascending. So it's very likely that this was some kind of a musical shorthand for the ancient choir in the temple. The truth is, we don't know what it means. We don't know why these are called songs for ascent. But Rashi has a couple of theories. Rashi, undeterred by not knowing the answer, has a couple of theories of what the answer is. And here's a couple of the things that he says. He says, first of all, song for ascent. The literal meaning is that when the Levites started going up the stairs in the temple, they would recite this song. So picture the ancient temple. I know you all know what the ancient temple looks like. There's a series of 15 steps going up into the temple. These are the steps possibly that sit at the southern end of the Temple Mount. in what today is called the Southern Wall excavation. My sister actually had her bat mitzvah there back in the mid 90s. At the Southern Wall excavation, you can walk up the 15 steps. And the rabbis believed that possibly these are the songs that the Levites would sing as they walked up the steps in a ritual way every day. So it's, in that sense, it's a backwards looking. It reminds us of a moment in the past when things were better, when the temple stood, when there was sovereignty, when Jerusalem was whole. It reminds us of a time before the exile, a time when things were less broken. But at the same time, Rashi says there's a forward-looking hint here as well. Song for Ascent is a hint to the stairs the righteous will use in the afterlife to get from the tree of life to the throne of God. I have to admit, I don't fully understand what it means to go from the tree of life to the throne of God, but the point is you are ascending to be with the divine here. He says, as it says in the Sifri, which is a midrash, it doesn't say a song of ascent, Shir HaMa'alot. Some of the others say Shir HaMa'alot, a song of ascending. It says here Shir La Ma'alot, a song for ascending. In other words, a song for one who in the future will make the ascent of the righteous into the coming world. So at the same time that this psalm is backwards looking, that it harkens back to a past moment, it is also forward looking. It looks forward to a day when there will be a world that has been repaired, when the righteous will stand with God, when, as we say in the prayer book, Bayom hahu ihyeh Adonai echad u'shmo echad. On that day, God's name will be one, or God will be one, and God's name will be one. When our world will be repaired. So all at once, there's, even in the first two words of the psalm, there's this sort of backwards looking, forwards looking note that the world as it is right now isn't the way the world has to be. There perhaps was, and certainly can be, a better world than the one that we live in. And with that in mind, we lift up our eyes to the mountain. So Susan started to address this earlier, but I'm curious from others, what do you make of the imagery of lifting your eyes? Why is Esa Einai, I lift up my eyes? What is hopeful about the act of, or the imagery of, or the symbolism of lifting up one's eyes, either to the mountains or in general? Any thoughts on that? I see Bob. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, I was thinking from our earlier lessons, the whole idea of the Israelites being able to now look up because they're no longer slaves. So there's a difference in terms of them now looking forward and looking out versus looking down
Hmm.
to be careful.
Yeah, and you're referencing this week's Torah portion, the beginning of Bamidbar, which I knew somebody was going to say that, so I brought it up. Take a census, which is translated, or which literally mean, would literally se'u et rosh, lift up the heads of the Israelites. And while this in the Torah at a pshat level, a basic level, this is it's mechanical, right? Take a head count, count each person. The rabbis say, no, there's something spiritual here. These people have come out of Egypt, out of enslavement. Lift up their heads to remind them that they are worthwhile, that they are humans made in the image of God, and that they have a responsibility to repair the world around them. It's interesting, the language of lifting up your head, which can mean both know that you are worth something and also know that you have a job to do. Let's go to David.
Yeah, I like kind of what Paul is saying in the chat and what Susan said earlier. There's also just this kind of physical body-mind interaction that happens when you lift up and look up. And it's also like look up from your current problems
Hmm.
and look up to the greater things, whether those are mountains or whatever the beauty. Maybe it's your loved ones. Look up from yourself and whatever. If you're feeling depressed, you're looking inward, right? And so sometimes that's okay, but sometimes just looking up will help you get out of that moment. Um, and look up and out, is another preposition for that to me
Mm.
that are related in this context.
Yeah, I like that. And so then that takes us into the next verse where it says, where does my help come from? My help comes from that which is beyond my immediate context. And I know many of us struggle with this idea of God as maker of heaven and earth. I don't know if I believe that literally, but there is something beyond what's right in front of me right now. And looking up, I think, helps us to see a broader context. By the way, in our 21st century context, look up also means get your eyes off that screen. Look at the real world around you. Look up instead of down where our eyes are so much of the time. Yudi, please, and then I'm going to move us to the next verse.
Yeah, I wanted to add to what David said because that mind-body connection, like it feels so real, and also an image, like could it also be an image of pride? Like when we look up, we feel pride of who we are, and that we're Israelis and Jewish, and we're proud of that, and we're optimistic in some way.
And I wonder, I know there's certain connections, certain moments where things you do with your body actually affect how you feel. Apparently, when you smile, you feel happier. So I wonder if it is the case that if you lift up your head, if you look up, that you feel more hopeful. And I don't know that for sure, but I can see how that could be the
Yeah.
case. Thanks, Yudi. All right, next couple of verses here. God will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. See or behold, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Now, when I read this, I thought, what a strange image. Why would you need to say, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps? Does God sleep? Why would you even think that? And when I dug into it a little bit, I realized or remembered that there are other places in the Psalms where it says specifically that. This is Psalm 44. This is a psalm of despair. A psalm of the psalmist is crying out to God from despair and says, rouse yourself. Why do you sleep, O my sovereign? Sovereign here is Adonai. Awaken, do not reject us together. What forever? Why do you hide your face, ignoring our affliction and distress? We lie prostrate in the dust, our body clings to the ground. Arise and help us, redeem us, as befits your faithfulness. So here's an image where the psalmist says, God is sleeping. Why are you sleeping, God? And then in our passage, the psalmist says, no, God doesn't sleep. So how could these both be in the Psalms? What do you make of, or how do you reconcile the idea that the Psalms, within only a few chapters of each other, both say, God, wake up, why are you sleeping? And also, God is the guardian of our people, or even of myself, who never sleeps. Bob, what do you make of that?
Different authors. The 44th Psalm is a Psalm of David, I think, and he had a pretty rough life and must have felt at times that he had been abandoned from time to time. And if we go with this idea that the songs of ascents were written by the sons of Korah, well, Korah fell into the earth, and so did his sons with him. But poof, a little volcano in the middle of the pit came along and tossed his sons up so they would be able to write those psalms of ascents with a better attitude.
Citing one of the stranger midrashim there is there. But yeah, so perhaps different authors, different ways of seeing the world, right? It kind of lends credence to our idea.
Bob, I'm going to use that in my Korah sermon this year.
There we go. Kind of lends credence to our idea that the Tanakh does not speak with one voice. It speaks in a multitude of voices that represent, the multitude of our people. Doreen, what's your take here?
Well, David cleaved to God and was called a man after God's own heart. And I think that the Psalms show us, no matter who they were written by, they show us the full range of human condition. So when you're really in despair, you question God. When you need lifting up, you pray a psalm of worship. When you're conflicted, you say that terrible psalm that David said about kill my enemy and let nobody be nice to his wife and his orphan children. No matter where you are and what you have, you come to God with all of it. You don't go to your neighbor and gripe. You come to God with all of it. And the Psalms are showing us that no matter how special we think we are or how distressed we are, how much we feel like praising, everybody's been there before, and you can find a kinship in the Psalms.
Nice. Yeah. There, what does it say in Hamlet? There is more in heaven and earth than is thought of in your philosophy, in your experience. You don't even need multiple authors. By the way, I agree with Bob that there are multiple authors in the Tanakh, but you don't even need multiple authors to write God is sleeping and also write God never sleeps. And I think there's also hope in that idea that, sometimes we feel like this. Wait, where did it go? I lost my Psalm 44. I must have closed Psalm 44. Sometimes we feel like Psalm 44, God, you are sleeping. But even when we feel that, we don't stay there. We we work our way through and we come back to a place where we feel like Psalm 121. That's not always easy to know when you're in the depths, when you're in the pit. And yet those are both human experiences and we go through them multiple times in our lives. And I think the psalmist is trying to remind us of that. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. By day, the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. By the way, I think that this verse is the reason that we read this at funerals, because of course, the sun and the moon are the dangers, as if you will, of this world, right? But once a person's gone onto the next world, and they can't be harmed by the things that scare us, that have to do with the daily cycle. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life. God will guard your coming and going now and forevermore. So
And
there's a
to me,
power.
the importance is that no matter what it is, you go to God with it. You're not afraid. You come to God unvarnished, and God is there to meet you no matter what state you're in. That's what the Psalms show me.
That's beautiful, Doreen. Thank you. And there's a power here in the words, and there's also a power in music. And so, again, inspired by our class last week, I thought it would be interesting to look at two different melodies for this psalm, for the way that it is sung, because it's one thing to look at the words, and it's another thing to think about how we share these words with each other. And in this case, there are a million melodies, some of them slow, some of them joyous, some of them more funeral oriented, and some of them much more happy. If it's okay with you, I thought I'd sing a melody for you. And let's talk about how it feels to think about the psalm this way. Can you hear my guitar? Give me a thumbs up if you hear it. No? Ugh, that's too bad. All right, I tried to set up the original sound thing, but it didn't work. So we're just gonna go with not guitar. So one melody that you might know, and I'll leave the words up on the screen, goes like this, and it can be sung slowly or quickly. Sing with me if you know the words, and if you don't know the words, just sing anyway, because nobody can hear you anyway. It goes, Esa Einai el heharim me'ayin yavo ezri. Esa Einai el heharim me'ayin yavo ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai Ose Shamayim Varetz. Ezri me'im Adonai Ose Shamayim Varetz. Esa Einai el heharim me'ayin yavo ezri. Esa Einai el Harim me'ayin yavo Ezri. Familiar to some of you? How does that melody feel? What does it make you think about or feel when you either hear or when you sing these words to that particular tune? I see Doreen. Go ahead, Doreen.
Miriam was accompanying you with tambourines. That's a very tambourine kind of melody. Bob is agreeing. Yeah.
Hmm. I like that. I'd like to have Miriam accompany me with tambourines. Sabrina, you said being rocked or balanced. You mean rocked in a rocking chair? Is that what you were talking about, Sabrina?
In the arms of your mother when you're a baby.
Yeah, I can see how, like this idea of being enfolded, right? It's a very hopeful image there. There's no more comfortable, hopeful place than in the arms of your mother as a baby, right? David, please.
Yeah, the rocking sense, the rhythm is very much of a rocking rhythm, and it to me like the melody really does add an uplifting feeling, even though it's kind of minor keyed, of course, but it just does the way the swoops in the melody go.
Hmm.
It's uplifting.
It's funny how it's both minor key and uplifting. It's minor key in that what I think of as that sort of traditional Jewish way, where oh wait, I just shared the wrong screen. Where all Jewish songs have to be minor key. You can
Right.
sing
Yeah.
all Jewish songs with A minor, D minor and E7, right? And yet it manages to be uplifting. And interestingly, that melody can be sung either very slowly. Sometimes I'll sing that at a funeral, and it'll sound more like Esa Einai. Right, same melody but slower and contemplative. Or you could really rock it up with that melody as well. I want to share one more with you, which is actually quite different than that one. And this is a melody that that is from an Israeli rock group. It's actually a Jewish Palestinian rock group called Sheva that was formed in the late 90s. This group was created, this is the same group that sang the song you might know that's called Salam or Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, May peace yet come to us and to all the world. So it is a multi-ethnic rock group that is dedicated to making peace through music. And they chose this psalm. We're going to go, if it's okay with everybody, we'll go about 2-3 minutes over here. They chose this psalm as a song of peace. And what I'm going to do is they speed up. So I'm going to play it through for us the first time, and then I'm going to take us to the third time through where they've sped it up. So bear with me as I adjust in the middle. Here's how it sounds.
Esa Einai el Harim yavo Ezri מאימה שעושה שמיים וארץ אל ייתן למות רגליך אל ינום שומרך הנה לא ינום ולא יישן שומר ישראל השם שומרך השם צילך על יד ימינך יומם השמש לא יככה והריח בלילה השם ישמורך מכל רע ישמור את נפשך השם ישמור צאתך ובואך מעתה ועד עולם.
Here's how it goes when it's
שיר למעלות אשא עיניי אל ההרים
to stop because we're over our time. Any quick reactions to this second melody? How did it feel? Same words, right? Exact same words. How did it feel to you to hear this second melody? I happen to love it because, first of all, it sounds very Middle Eastern, right? The first one sounds sort of like Ashkenazi Eastern European. The second one to me feels like a fusion of Jewish and Palestinian, of Middle Eastern, of the peoples of, the land of Israel, Palestine, which I think is really beautiful. Any other reactions? Did it feel hopeful to you as well, this second version of it? I see some thumbs up there. I will share so the first one is called Esa Einai, and the second one is simply called Shir Lama'alot by Sheva. So, I think to me this is a beautiful example of how both words and melody can help create hope, and how ancient words can continue to be relevant today. I don't know who wrote I lift my eyes to the mountains and ask where will my help come from, but it seems to me that that's something people have been doing for as long as there have been people, and that the answer has always been a version of Ezri me'im Adonai. My help comes from the source of heaven and earth. My help comes from the knowledge that the universe is greater, the knowledge that I can lift up my head in pride, and also that I have a responsibility to help make the world better than it is. And there's perhaps nothing more hopeful than that. So with that, we'll end. I appreciate you being part of this today, and next week we meet with Rabbi Shira Kraus as we study the hopeful message of the prophets. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. See you next week.
Thank you,
Shabbat
Rabbi.
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.